What was that, Keith? A tactical puke?
Tactical puke,
Yeah.
that's it, yeah.
That's it. Alrighty. Hey, you and welcome. My name is Mike, and you're listening to the That Chapter podcast. I'm joined by my junior associate, Dirty Keith.
Hey-o.
He's right here, sitting across from me. And yeah, folks, today we got for you part two of Herbert Mullen, the man who thought he could prevent the apocalypse by murdering as many people as he possibly could. And you know what? California.
Yeah.
Still standing.
There we go. I mean,
So,
like, he did something.
is
maybe.
he wrong? We don't know. Folks, who knows how this is going to turn out?
We'll leave it up to you to decide.
Yeah, exactly. We're just storytellers here. We're narrators. We're best friends forever, sitting beside you.
We sit on the fence.
Exactly.
We just give you the facts.
Yeah, that way we always come out on top.
Yeah, exactly. I'm playing both sides.
Yeah, we play both sides here, folks. You know. But yeah, folks, by the way, speaking of things we talk about in the podcast, fence sitter is one thing I am not when it comes to movie reviews, because I promised in the last episode I'd have more movie reviews for you. And I come true. Hey, Mike, he delivers. So today, the first movie I'm going to talk to you about is a new movie.
Okay.
Just came out called Dangerous Animals.
Ooh, yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah, so I thought it's a lot of fun.
Yeah?
I enjoyed it. Like, it's dumb as shit. Yeah. But it's very, very fun. So the movie, it's set in Australia.
Oh,
no, it's set in Australia, mate. And so basically the plot is, I don't want to, no spoilies.
Yeah.
But the premise is there's a kind of a serial killer. Okay. Played by Australian actor Jai Courtney. Who I've only ever seen this actor in like one other thing. He was in Suicide Squad. Did you ever see You know where there's like two movies called The Suicide Squad that came out like within 2 years. Yeah. He's the Australian boomerang guy.
Oh yeah, that guy. Yeah, I know.
He's great.
Yeah, okay.
He's the bad guy. He's the villain of the movie.
Okay,
and he's absolutely fantastic. By far the best thing about the movie. Yeah. So his thing, his kink or whatever, is he kidnaps people, usually like surfer women in Australia, and he drugs them, he drags them onto his boat, locks them up in a thing downstairs, and then like in a cabin or whatever, chains them to a bed, and then he sails out into the ocean, and then he like ties them up and slowly like feeds them to a shark.
Oh shit, okay.
Like while video recording it.
Right.
That's like his thing. And he has like, at one point you see like his VCR tapes. Yeah. And he's got like dozens of them, each with a different woman's name on it.
Jesus, okay.
It's like crocky, is all I have to say, watching it. But of course, he does it to one woman, and plot and the story, she fights back, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a good horror movie. You know, that kind of way. It's not, there's nothing too like deep about it. But
is it like the sequel to Jaws, where it's like he's in cahoots with the shark? He gets a psychic to bring victims to him. That's a twist.
That would be a twist. It'd be a very bad twist, Keith. That'd be a terrible twist if that was part of the movie. But it could be. No spoilers. Okay. But it's a lot of fun. It's just a fun, dumb sort of horror slasher serial. I mean, technically he doesn't really kill anybody. He just feeds them to sharks, and the sharks kill people.
He just happens to be there.
He just happens to be there and puts them in that situation.
He's facilitated.
Yeah, he facilitates them getting eaten by sharks. So there's a lot of people get eaten by sharks in it. There's one or two moments in a movie where they're incredibly like eye-rollingly stupid, but overall it's a fun kind of horror slasher or whatever you want to call it movie. So I would give that like probably a 6.5 out of 10.
Okay,
it's fun.
I like how your ratings change every week.
What is it usually? What, one thumbs up? Or something?
Sometimes it's 2 thumbs up. Sometimes it's out of 6.
Well, hey, I like to. I keep you on your toes. You never know what's gonna happen.
Speaking of toes, I give it 4 toes up.
Yeah, exactly. I give it one big toe. That's what I give this movie. I give it one big toe. It's worth a watch. I would recommend it if you're looking for a movie to watch. Okay. Probably wouldn't watch it again, but it's fun. I'd watch it for Jai Courtney. He's great. Yeah. He's like one of those actors. Again, the only thing I've ever seen him in was Suicide Squad. I hope he's in more things. He's a lot of fun to watch. Welcome aboard. Okay, another movie I watched was, you guys might remember in part 1, I sang the stink poo of Halloween, the original Halloween. Yeah. So what I then decided to watch is, there's, I don't know how many movies in the Halloween franchise there is. A lot. Yeah. I learned that the original plan, John Carpenter, the creator of it, was that every Halloween movie, it was supposed to be an anthology series. Okay. So like there was Halloween, and the next movie would be another Halloween movie, but about a different killer or a different scary story. Okay, cool. Right? It wasn't supposed to all be about Michael Myers, but that was so successful, they stuck to it. Except for Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. Oh, okay. Which, in Halloween 3, I started watching. And I watched maybe the first 15, 20 minutes of it. It's very 80s. Very, very 80s. Yeah. And sort of in a cringy, semi-charming, semi-cringy way. And while I was watching it, I was thinking, The average Western white male, like me, lives to approximately 80 years of age, give or take, right? Which calculates to about 7,000 hours of life. I have 700,000 hours. It's different, Jesus, I'm well fucking past myself if that was the case. The average white Western male is to about 80 years of age, 700,000 hours.
Okay.
I didn't want to waste 2 of them watching this shit. So after watching for 20 minutes, I turned it the fuck off. Because it was terrible. The basic plot was like, there was this corporation selling Halloween masks that turned kids evil. And there was like mysterious men in black. I thought it sounded cool, Season of the Witch. I was like, oh, it's going to be some kind of creepy shit. It's like, no, it's like dumb.
Oh, that's stupid.
Yeah, I didn't even know what the title didn't even really have anything to do with it.
It's kind of like Chucky, where it's a doll that's haunted by something, but it's just like, it's a creepy Halloween mask. Is it the Halloween mask haunted? And you kind of...
But it was like many Halloween, like they were selling loads of these, and it was, I think it was like a shady... Folks, I'm not going to lie, I didn't get far enough into the movie to actually give a shit to understand what was happening in the plot. Some shit or something was happening, and then something plot, I don't know. So, avoid. Okay, next movie, 2 movies actually, want to mention briefly, and I got to give a shout out, I have to look through my emails here, to Andy, sent me these to review for Mike's movie review requests, and they are Horror in the High Desert. There's 3 in the series. I watched the first 2. So Horror in the High Desert, they're both found footage movies, which is...
Your favorite.
Andy. Hit the nail on the head. My favorite type of horror genre. So the first movie is based on... Keith, have you ever heard the story of Kenny Veach?
Oh, I know the name. Kenny Veach.
Kenny Veach was a guy who lived in Las Vegas, Nevada. He ran a YouTube channel called Snake Bit McGee. I've covered it, I think, twice on the That Chapter main YouTube channel, folks. But yeah, basically, the long story short, he was this guy who got hiking around Nevada into the mountains and yada yada. And then in one video he uploaded about his hikes, he mentions this cave, this very unusual cave that he found. And he says it was really weird, it was really creepy, he got this really weird aura from the cave. He sort of hinted that it was something paranormal about the cave. And then he talks about it, and then he says, I'm going to go out and try and find the M-shaped cave again.
Okay.
And then he just never posted to YouTube again. Like, it's a true story. This is a person who's actually missing to this day. Like,
still, okay, right.
Yeah, they never found him. So it's like, it's got this, it's a kind of a YouTube horror story, urban legend type thing. So that's Kenny Veach. And so the first Horror in the High Desert is very loosely based on him. Okay. It's about this guy who loves trains. He's this young guy who, again, lives in Nevada. He's going out exploring, and he finds this cabin out in the middle of the desert, or like a mountains of the desert, whatever, and he hears this like weird chanting, he gets this weird aura, and then he goes back, he tells the audience, oh hey guys, I was out there, found this weird thing. Commenters started commenting, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna go out and find that shack again, and then he disappears. So the movie is sort of like his footage mixed in with like fake documentary, like police interviews and his family who are trying to find them.
Cool.
And then they never find him, but they find his footage of him finding the cave, and you're just like some weird like inbred monster Hills of Eyes looking motherfucker out there. So it's kind of like that. It's kind of creepy. It's very, very slow. It slows molasses the whole movie. But if you're into a creepy found footage movie, it's not bad. I've seen worse. The second movie is like, what the fuck? I thought weirdly enough, I thought the second movie was better. It involves, again, it's set in the same area. It literally has nothing to do with the first one, other than a brief reference to it, and it's set in the same area, and it's about 2 women, one who's found dead, another one who goes missing in the same area. Okay. But again, it's literally just like...
Is it found footage again?
Sort of, yeah. Okay. It's mixed in with like, all sorts of found footage. So interviews, all kind of cameras, like dash cams, all stuff. Like, it's found footage. Okay. Like a fake documentary. It's sort of, in movie 2, it's weird. It's like, it just talks about these 2 women that go missing. It doesn't like link them in any way. There's no overarching plot. It barely links back to the first movie. It doesn't expand on like, what's happening around here? Is there like some crazy hillbilly people who are killing people around here?
Just ignores them.
It's just like, she disappeared and we don't know what happened. And then the second person disappeared and we don't know what happened. And then the movie just ends.
Oh, okay.
It's a lot creepier than the first one. It has some really like scary moments in it, but it just sort of is a movie that just happens without any kind of plot line. I haven't watched the third one. By the way, I mean that in a positive way. Like, I thought the second one was actually pretty decent. It just doesn't have a point to it.
Maybe the third one ties them all together.
Yeah, I didn't watch it though because I did read briefly that it's not very good.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, skip. But yeah, all right, folks. There you go. That's Mike's movie reviews. all right, let's get into it.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to getting to this one.
Yes.
Herb's a madman. Actually, do you know, so last week we were kind of chatting about Herb, and we were chatting about how he was kind of going into psychosis and delusions, and he was looking for patterns, and he was looking for like little coincidences and taking these as a grand sign. And it got me thinking. So on the drive down here to record, so I seen a dead bird on the road, and I was like, oh, cool, a dead bird. Then I drove a little further, I seen another dead bird in the road. And then I drove a little further again, and another dead bird in the road. I was like, that's gotta be a sign. That's weird. 3 dead birds?
Oh man.
And then I seen a 4th dead bird. And I was like, yeah, it's okay. It's something about seeing 3 dead birds
Things was
weird. But then the 4th one was like, oh, okay,
nah,
fine again.
You broke it.
You broke it. I'm not scared anymore. It's cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Who ends on an even number?
No,
stupid.
Weirdos. Yeah. Although 4 in Korea, that's why it struck me. 4 is considered a bad number. 4 is in Korea, and maybe other Asian countries too. I'm not sure. It's like their number 13.
Right. Okay.
Some buildings will actually skip 4th floor. It'll go 3rd to 5.
Ah, well, it's a good thing I live in Ireland.
It's like, oh shit, that actually would have only made sense if you were. All right, wish you ain't. So moving on. All right, folks. Last week we talked about Herb's upbringing, which was normal by all accounts, till he started fooling around with drugs. Kids, learn your lesson. He spun into severe schizophrenia, bounced around from place to place in California before the voices in his head, mainly his father's, began to tell him he needed to kill people. Sacrifice folk to prevent an almighty earthquake which would destroy society. And so kill he did. His first victim being Lawrence White, a homeless man he beat to death with a baseball bat on, of all days, Friday the 13th, 1972. Now, the early 1970s, it was a scary time to be a Santa Cruz resident. There seemed to be rarely a week go by that didn't have yet another murder dominating the headlines. You might be wondering just why you, as a proud true crime aficionado, like you are, if you're listening to this podcast, why you haven't heard of a killer as weird and prolific as Herb Mullen before, if you haven't heard of him before. Well, that's probably because Herb had his thunder stolen in the worst kind of way by one of the worst people to ever live. But we'll get to that in a second. Just know, early 1970s as part of California, there was more than a few serial killers knocking around. So, Herbert, emboldened by the ease with which he killed and seemingly got away with Lawrence White's murder, he had simply bashed a man's head in and kicked him off to the side of the road and driven away after all. Herb began to think of himself as something of an artist doing the Lord's work.
Later in 1972, so Herb, he read a biography of Michelangelo, The Agony and the Ecstasy by Irving Stone. So the book had been gifted to him by his mother, something she would very quickly regret. So at this point, Herb's impressionable mind was basically taking everything he read as gospel and adding it to his twisted worldview. Several elements of Stone's book, it really affected Herb and became part of his new identity as a killer artist. So Herb learned from the book that Michelangelo was so deeply committed to finding perfection in his work, particularly his study of the human body, that he would routinely perform detailed dissections of human cadavers in order to better understand every element of what shaped us and what made us who we are. So this was, of course, a very dangerous thing for someone like Herb to read. Already a huge admirer of Michelangelo's work, he now saw a way to improve his own art and understanding of people. So Herb decided that his next murder would have to involve dissection.
Yikes.
Although being completely untrained in anything surgical, the end result would, of course, be nothing more than mutilation.
Despite a warning from authorities actively dissuading anyone, but especially young women, from hitchhiking around the Santa Cruz area, 24-year-old student Mary Margaret Guilfoyle, she was late for a job interview. So when she saw the very non-threatening Herbert Mullen driving his Chevy and heading her way, she thought nothing of popping out a thumb and hopping in the passenger seat. Herb might not have been anywhere near the stature of the monstrous Edmund Kemper, who lived just a couple of blocks away from where Herb picked up Mary and was the cause of those alerts to young women thinking of hitchhiking around California at the time, but he was every bit as dangerous, and their interaction would prove to be every bit as deadly as if she had ran into Edmund Kemper himself. Yeah, you probably haven't heard of Herbert Mullen because Edmund Kemper was murdering people in the exact same area at the exact same time.
How terrifying is that? Whereas, like, even if you had got away from Herbert Mullen, chances are.
Yeah, exactly. This big fucking loaf was gonna pull over.
Pick you up, yeah.
Yeah. So Mary got in his car, and Herb, he instantly turned on the charms and had Mary disarmed enough that when he turned off and pulled up a side street, she hadn't even realized anything was wrong. Seconds later, Herb plunged a hunting knife into Mary's chest. In a few seconds, she was dead. As Herb tore the knife from her chest, her limp body slumped forwards, and Herb took the opportunity to make sure the job was done and stabbed her again in the back. With Mary's still bleeding body in the passenger seat, Herb casually drove to a more deserted area where he dragged his second victim's body out so he could perform his operation undisturbed. Using the knife he'd used to take her life, Herb cut into the lifeless girl's abdomen and pulled out her intestines. Mary's body wasn't found until February 11th, 1973, months after she was killed, by which time Herb had already claimed a lot more victims.
It's a pity that he took inspiration from Michelangelo the artist and not Michelangelo the turtle.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Just eat pizza and surf all day, bro.
Showing off his sweet nunchuck skills.
Yeah, cowabunga, am I right? Yeah.
So Herb's third victim would somehow, even though it was objectively less maniacal, it managed to be every bit as shocking as the last. So not only because of who, but also where he committed the crime. It came on the 2nd of November 1972 in a drunken and deluded stupor. Herb found himself walking into St. Mary's Church of Los Gatos, not far from Santa Cruz. Now initially Herb had entered the church believing it to be empty and intended only to speak with God. He'd later say that he wanted to ask God to give him strength to not kill again. Likely story. While there, Herb soon realized that he wasn't alone. Rather, the 65-year-old priest, Father Henry Tomey, was sitting in the church's confessional booth, waiting for any members of his congregation who wanted to air their sins and ask for penance. Almost immediately, Herb decided that, far from asking for strength not to kill again, he was going to kill again.
I love that idea. He walked in asking God, hoping to ask God, please give me the strength not to kill again. And then he sees the priest. He's like, well, I guess God wants me to kill again because he put somebody else in here.
If that's not a sign, I don't know what is. So only when he attempted to force his way into the confessional booth, Herb was surprised to find the elderly priest was far from being a pushover.
Indeed, he was no pushover whatsoever. Father Henry Tomey had lived in occupied France and had been a hero of la resistance during the war. He literally fought in the French resistance. So, when he heard the commotion outside the booth and opened the confessional door to see Herb standing there with a knife, he put up more than a fair fight against the much younger man. Unfortunately, Father Tomey eventually succumbed to the blade after Herb's knife hit him directly in the heart. Like Mary, he bled out in seconds. Those seconds, though, were enough for one of Father Tomey's parishioners to witness the priest struggling with his killer. She just happened to walk into the church. The woman then ran screaming from the building and went for help. But by the time the responders came, it was too late. Herb had fled, and Father Henry was beyond help. The priest's funeral was almost the complete opposite of Herb's first victim, Lawrence White. There was no shortage of mourners, including an array of society's higher-ups, as well as community civic leaders. The media and investigative responses were drastically different from, unfortunately, but it's how society works. Yeah. It was drastically different from a homeless guy, unfortunately, nobody really cared about. Father Tomey had been a key player in many people's lives. His loss, it hit hard. Newspapers and the rumor mill were soon rife with stories of Satan worshippers. And Keith's light eyes lit up as soon as I said it. That satanic cultists had targeted the priest. The investigative response was also quick and well-equipped, but ultimately came up mostly empty-handed. See, what actually went in Herb's favor was how random and off-the-cuff the nature of the crime was. Herb left little to no evidence behind, except for one thing. Herb hadn't been wearing gloves, and in the course of struggling with Father Tomey, he had left some fingerprints for the police to work with. Now, this was the early 70s. There was no database to work from, unless Herb gave them a reason to run his prints against those of the priest's killer. If that didn't happen, though, the chances of him being caught was pretty small.
The very same month that he killed Father Tommy, Herb, he decided that he needed to find a way to make his killings legal.
Get paid for it.
Get paid, yeah. And the only way he could think to do this was to enlist in the military.
Just like his daddy wanted.
That's it. So Herb, he applied to join, and if you want to kill someone, you're going to go to the most obvious branch of the military.
Of course.
The US Coast Guard.
Dang!
It's drowning people. Yeah. Naturally, Herb, he completely tanked the psychological exam required for entry and received his refusal letter in December. Herb naturally took all this very reasonably and definitely didn't blame a secret hippie conspiracy against him.
Herbert suddenly began to rant about this conspiracy done by the US military. And he would rant about this to anybody who would listen to him. The hippies in the government are after him again. The long hairs. Now, Herbert's story went, he'd never truly been a conscientious objector at all. It had all been part of a brainwashing effort against him by the anti-war movement to stop him from being on the front lines, where he should have been the whole time, of course. He's definitely changed his mind. He's like, oh, I didn't want to work in Goodwill. You guys don't understand. I wanted to be there.
I wanted to kill.
Yeah, I really wanted to kill.
I'm not a coward.
This huge right turn. Remember, Herb had been a pot-smoking, long-haired hippie who his dad hated.
Yeah.
For a long time, and now he turns the opposite way. He was very anti-hippie now. He also decided that it was time to freshen up on his method of killing. Now, the knife thing just wasn't enough, and Herb now bought himself a shooter. Herb's other reason for buying the pistol was, Herb believed himself to be 1/3 Scandinavian, and he recently read Einstein on Peace, in which he discovered that every military-aged male in Switzerland was required to own a gun. Now, two things. One is, I remember he was born the day Einstein died.
Yep.
So he sees the link there. Two, he read that every male in Switzerland should have a gun, and he's Scandinavian.
Yep.
Let's not mention the fact that Switzerland is not a Scandinavian country. Herb didn't realize that, and so he said, I guess I'm a Switzerland person then too. Literally, he did not cop that Switzerland is not in Scandinavia, but he didn't let that get in the way of him.
No, that's semantics, yeah.
He still needed a gun for self-defense. For some reason, the gun shop owner, didn't think anything of Herb putting sketch artist under the occupation category on the form. This would also be the first time that Herb would have a specific victim in mind, not a random person, and the first time he would target someone he knew personally. Herb had come very close to carrying out his plan when he went to the home of his longtime friend John Hooper. Luckily for Hooper, when Herb arrived, he discovered Hooper had several other people with him, and his plan was scuppered. Instead, he would temporarily shift his sights back to trying to enlist in the hippie conspiracy. That's okay. Anything that makes sense, folks, is thrown out the window.
Yeah.
Because he was blaming the hippies for not letting him into the military. Now he was trying to get back into the military. This time, though, he was going for the Marines, the US Marines, and he actually had a little bit better success.
See, that was his first mistake. He went to the Coast Guard first.
Well, he was in the right church, wrong pew.
Yeah.
Something to do with the sea.
Yeah.
He was thinking water. And he's like, all right.
It's gotta be water.
Yeah.
In mid-January 73, Herb, he actually managed to lie his way through the psych test for the Marines, and he even passed the physical. All he had to do was sign a form acknowledging his criminal record, and that would have been that. But, not being a rational-minded person, and despite being willing to lie on the psych exam, Herb, he flat out refused to sign the acknowledgement of his criminal past, insisting that the charges should have been dropped, and so he was turned out on his arse at the very last second.
How stubborn he was.
So close.
So in place of a career in the military, Herb turned his efforts back to raising his body count as a one-man army. His next spree would begin less than a week after he was turned away from several jobs and moved out of the family home once again. This time though, it wasn't so much he moved out, it was more he was chucked out after his father and Herb's mother had finally gotten fed up of Herb's non-stop complaining and blaming them for everything that went wrong in his life. On January 25th, 1973, 25-year-old Herb had refocused his murderous intentions on someone he knew. Though by now, he had seemingly moved on from John Hooper and instead decided to kill Jim Janera, the friend of his deceased school friend. Remember Dean, his best friend who passed away in an automobile accident? Jim had been friends with him, Jim had been friends with Herb, and Jim had been the man who introduced him to the hippie movement, and more importantly, gave Herbert Mullen his very first joint.
He was the one that set it all off in motion.
The last of those was Herb's reasoning for targeting Jim Janera. He had made up his mind that the old devil's lettuce was the start of his downfall, and that meant Janera was responsible for Herb's downward trajectory in life. Only killing Janera would make things right. In Herb's twisted mind, Janera was the beginning of it all, and he sort of was.
He kind of was.
I mean, obviously he didn't give him a joint knowing that this would happen. Just thought, you pass that dinger, bro, you know? But truly, giving him that joint did set him off on this.
It set a lot of things in motion after that,
I don't blame Jim for it.
Sounds like you are.
I sort of am, but not really.
Okay. So he even convinced himself that Janera had talked him out of buying property that would have made him rich. The only issue was that Herb only had the old address for Jim Janera and hadn't seen him for a very long time. Still, it was the only place Herb knew where to begin, so he headed over armed with both his shiny new pistol and his trusty old hunting knife.
That's it. That afternoon, January 25th, Herb drove to Janera's last known address, a shack-like home in the mystery spot Santa Cruz County. The area was popular with tourists, but this afternoon it was quiet due to heavy rain. When Herb knocked on the door of the house he last knew Jim to be living in, it was a young woman named Kathleen Francis, better known as Kathy, who answered the door, not Jim Janera. Kathy lived there with her partner, Bob Hughes, who was away, and her 2 children, 4-year-old Damon and 9-year-old David. Herb asked to speak with his old friend Janera, but Kathy told him Jim and his wife Joan had moved to Western Avenue in the middle of town. So Herb politely thanked her and left for Janera's family home on Western Avenue. Later that day, Joan, Janera's mother, Eleanor Foster, would stop by to drop off their infant daughter. And it was Eleanor Foster who would discover the bodies of her daughter and son-in-law. They were lying on the bathroom floor. Each had been shot and stabbed multiple times. Jim Janera had fought back, but had been too badly wounded by the first shot to stop Herb from coming in and finishing the job, dragging him up the stairs and shooting Jean in the head before launching into an all-out stabbing frenzy on both of the already deceased Janeras, according to Herb, to make sure they were dead. Thankfully, their 14-month-old daughter was with their grandparents at the time because Herb likely would have gone for her too. That wasn't it for Herb's spree for the day. Far from it. Instead of going home, Herb returned to Jim Janera's previous home on Mystery Spot Road, the place that was now home to Kathy Francis and her 2 young children. Once he parked down the road from the house so Kathy wouldn't spot him and get spooked, Herb walked the last of the way. Herb knew from his earlier visit that Kathy didn't lock the door, so it was just a matter of throwing open the door and blasting away. He shot Kathy in the head and chest. Herb then just surprised the boys as they played a board game on their bunk beds. Again, just as he had with the Janeras, Herb went into overkill mode and stabbed all 3 of the Francis family multiple times, even after they were long dead.
The murders of Kathy and her boys, while seemingly the most unnecessary yet, were actually the first of Herb's murder that actually might have had a point to them outside of simply raising his sacrificed bodily count. So Kathy was technically a witness. She might not have seen anything, but she was the only person who knew that Herb was looking for Jim Janera. And she certainly knew Jim's new address. So she could have pointed the police in that direction, and that would have done it for old Herbie as he saw it. Condemned many more lives than the ones he had sacrificed. He just killed them,
Yeah, exactly. When the police go to Jim's, they'll be like, well, Kathy will say, well, I just told the guy where he lived because he knocked on my door.
Yeah.
So it's probably that guy. Poor Kathy and her, obviously, 2 young sons who were brutally murdered. I mean, literally just talked about it. They just happened to, live in the wrong house.
Yeah. Horrendous,
And Herb's, it was just an outright massacre. Like 2 scenes, 5 people dead, including 2 young children. Herb also got lucky though, sorta. So both Jim Janera, his victim, and Bob Hughes, his victim's husband, were well known to be active drug dealers. And in fact, Jim and Bob knew each other. The murders of the Janeras and the Francises, especially with the unrestrained brutality of them, it looked like this had been some kind of someone sending a message or some kind of drug-related murder. Detectives immediately began investigating the murders as drug-related. Bob Hughes, he was cleared almost instantly as he openly volunteered to the police. He'd been out of town on a drug deal at that very moment. In fact, Bob was very forthcoming with the police about his drug dealing because he wanted his wife and son's murders solved. He even wrote out a list of people who might have potentially had some involvement. Everybody he was on bad terms with, all that sort of thing. Of course, since Jim hadn't seen Herb since the summer of 1971, and Bob even longer, nowhere on that list was the name of the actual killer. Herb never came up. When police were investigating Jim's death, Herb's name never came up because they weren't known to be friends since like high school.
Yeah, it was just like a high school friend. You wouldn't go back that far. The police captain was actually quoted in one newspaper article reassuring the public that this is not a case of someone running amok and shooting people, accidentally hitting the nail on the head.
He's gonna regret that one.
Yeah, egg on his face. Huh?
Woo! So the aftermath of Herb's latest addition to the body pile might have been investigated as drug-related, but that didn't calm anyone down. These were seriously bloody times in Santa Cruz County and the surrounding areas. There were genuine fears that the killings were all connected to a crazed but organized satanic cult.
Nice.
Hell yeah. And that anyone could be a victim at any time. And to be fair, they were right. Herb wasn't the only diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic to have added Santa Cruz to becoming the murder capital of the United States. It's actually crazy how many serial killers there were in this part of, specific part of California at this time. So a year after the Tate LaBianca murders in LA, and a year and a bit before Herb began his spree, another serial killer, John Linley Frazier, also committed a horrific multiple murder under the influence of a psychotic break. Frazier, also known as the Killer Prophet, had become convinced he was the John from the Book of Revelation, and subsequently killed a wealthy doctor, his wife, and their 2 children, and a medical secretary. After shooting the 5 of them dead with a .38 caliber revolver, Frazier pushed the bodies into the family's swimming pool.
Jeez, this was like a good time for serial killers.
Yeah, so you had the Manson murders, then you had the Killer Prophet, John Linley Frazier, then you had Herbert Mullen, then you had Ed Kemper.
It's crazy.
It's wild. Herbert Mullen was the sandwich, the 70s murder sandwich. And then, you've multiple other serial killers. This is the golden age of serial killers.
Big time, yeah.
Really.
When was the Golden State Killer? When was he?
Oh, that's, I think it was 70s? Much later.
Let me Google real quick. Between 1974 and 1986.
Oh, wow.
So
okay, so yeah, would have been actually. It was 70s, a little bit later than this, but around, pretty close.
Yeah.
Yep, so the Golden State Killer. When was Richard Ramirez? That was 80s, I think.
That was 80s, I think, yeah. Yeah, the 1980s.
Missed out on that one.
A little late, Richie.
So a little more than 2 weeks after the Janera-Francis murders, on February 10th, 1973, Herb, he was wandering aimlessly through the Henry Cowell State Park, 20 minutes off the highway, when he came across a ramshackle, thrown-together camp in the middle of an area known as the Garden of Eden. Herb was infuriated by the campers' disturbing nature and planned to come back later and make sure these residents moved on. I mean, the Garden of Eden, it's clearly a hippie camp.
Yeah,
That's basically what it was. Now, the clear plastic tent was actually fairly well engineered for an improvised shelter and was around 12 feet by 10 feet in size. It had been built by Brian Card and his brother. His brother had since gone home. Brian had graduated high school and wanted to have an adventure before taking his next big step in adult life, and so camped out in this state park. Brian and his brother, they left home and made their way to the park by September of 1972, when they set up their base camp in Henry Cowell Park. And that's when they also met with a young 15-year-old runaway named Mark Drebelbus. Mark had lied to the others about his name and his age, as well as the fact he was on the run from a drugs possession charge. Brian's brother, he soon left, but Brian decided to stay in this camp with young Mark. And Brian and Mark were then joined by 2 more teenagers on their own adventure in Northern California. The 70s, what a time to be alive.
Right.
You could hitchhike, you could just camp when you're 15 years old.
No
wonder they all got murdered.
Right.
Truly.
Yeah, just people you just didn't know where they were in the world. It could be anywhere.
Yeah.
It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?
That was exactly it. Brian and Mark, they were joined by 2 more teenagers on their own adventure in Northern California. There was 18-year-old Robert Spector, a recent graduate. He wanted to be a clinical psychologist, and Robert had ideas about using nature as part of his patients' therapy. And then there was also David Oliker, also 18, who tagged along with Robert Spector and was sort of like trying to decide what he wanted to do next in life. Herbert ran into these 4 teenagers in the early morning hours, and Herbert initially said he was a park ranger. He told them off for polluting the forest and making a mess of this place, of nature, and he demanded that the boys clean up the site immediately and get the hell out of here. The boys didn't believe him, and they were not convinced that Herbert was a park ranger. It was at this moment that Herbert would later claim that he heard the boys telepathically communicating with him. In addition to the actual conversation he was having with the boys, Herb was having another one with them entirely inside his own noodle. In reality, the boys told Herb he had no power over them, and they weren't hurting anyone, so they wouldn't be going anywhere. At the same time, Herb was telepathically asking the boys if he could kill them, and he heard them reply, yes, and they were ready to die.
Okay.
I love that. Keith, I'm telepathically asking you if I can murder you. Yes. You said yes, so here you go. That was enough for Herb, his own head telling them they had agreed to die. He took out his gun and shot each of the shocked and terrified boys. The 4 boys were completely taken by surprise and had no chance to fight or even run. It was, we joke about it, but damn, that was like horrific.
Yeah, it's dark
thing to do.
Yeah.
Really, really dark.
The scene of Herb's second massacre, it wasn't discovered until a week after it actually taken place. So when the news of the latest slaughter hit the headlines, the residents of Santa Cruz, already on edge from the skyrocketing death toll, took a huge leap towards complete panic.
Absolutely. There was 2 separate family massacres and now another massacre in a state park.
Yeah.
Not counting the fact that you got Ed Kemper and all these other serial killers running around at the same time.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have liked to have been
the 70s.
Been living there.
Just serial killers living in the moment, not glued to their phones. Great. Yeah. But just 5 days before Herb's rampage in Henry Cole State Park, 2 young women, 20-year-old Alice Liu and 23-year-old Rosalind Thorpe, they also went missing after a hitchhiking ride. Although it was later discovered that they were 2 of the 6 female student hitchhikers killed by Kemper. But for a brief time, Herb, he was suspected for their murders. I mean, it's great. There's so much crossover.
Yeah, I know. There's so many serial killers. You don't know who did what.
Yeah.
It's wild. On February 12th, 1973, 5 days after the Park murders, Mary Guilfoyle's body was finally found. If you'll remember, Mary was his second victim, who he dissected, for want of a better word. The very next day, February 13th, Herb was driving in his station wagon when he spotted 72-year-old Fred Perez, who was working in his front driveway. Herb pulled up to Fred's house and shot him in the chest, completely random, leaving him to collapse unconscious as Herb sped away. Herb had no connection at all to the retired prizefighter and fishmonger. Fred was unfortunately hit in the heart, but fortunately for everybody else, his neighbor heard the gunshot and not only was able to call for help for, EMTs, but also she managed to write down the license plate of Herb's car as he fled the scene. So despite that phone call not being able to save Fred Perez's life, it did undoubtedly save more lives, as later that day, police were able to pull Herb over and take him into custody without incident. Herb, he was completely oblivious. What you doing here? What you doing with me? He pretended he had no idea why he was being arrested that day.
What, me?
Truly? While literally, the .22 pistol he used in the Janera-Francis murders, it was on the passenger seat. He murdered how many people? He murdered like 5 people.
Yeah.
2 of them young children with the very pistol beside him. The next day, a search warrant was executed on his apartment, where police found several more incriminating items, including an address book with Jim Janera's address marked down, literally his address, kill him, the what? And several newspaper cuttings of articles related to the recent spat of murders in Santa Cruz. The most damning thing, though, was a rosary that were identified as belonging to the priest he murdered, Father Tomei. They had been missing when he had been found dead. So with his fingerprints at the scene of the church murder, well, there was no way Herb wasn't going to be found guilty, and Herb knew it. Herb's complete lack of trying to get away with it meant the investigation wasn't exactly complicated, even without a confession. Every detective and officer who crossed Herb's path knew he was nuts beyond belief. The only question, was he legally nuts? Was he legally responsible for his actions? In March of 1973, Herb was charged with 10 counts of murder, excluding the charges for the murders of Lawrence White, Mary Guilfoyle, and Father Tomei.
Herb, he actually attempted on more than one occasion to defend himself, but the court quickly found that he was far from competent to act as his own counsel. I just imagine him getting up and just what are you doing? I'm telepathically sending a message to the jury. But even though he was actually attempting to plead guilty though. But Herb, he continued to object to his lawyer's assertions that he was insane and constantly tried to fire his court-appointed defense team. So Herb's own insistence that he wasn't insane did not help his case one bit, and in spite of his previous diagnosis of schizophrenia by several separate and independent doctors, as well as his history of breaks from reality during psychotic episodes, Herb was eventually found sane and fit to stand trial.
So Herb won.
Yeah.
He wanted to be found sane. He was like, I'm guilty, and I did it, and I know it. And I'm not crazy.
Yeah, the telepathy, it worked.
Yeah, he really did get what he wanted.
He did,
yeah. I mean, it's not good for him, because he might be killed for it, get the death penalty, but he didn't think he was crazy. A large part of Herb's insanity defense failing and falling apart was several precautions he had taken not to get caught, which showed he was competent and clearly knew what he was doing. He knew it was wrong. I mean, he himself knew it was wrong. Remember, he walked into that church praying to God to get him to stop killing.
Yeah.
Literally moments before he killed again. He killed the priest. He should have been confessing this shit.
There was a priest in the church. What was he meant to do? Okay?
Yeah.
I can't think of any other way out of that.
So actions as well he took, such as sanding down the baseball bat he used to kill Lawrence White to get rid of bloodstains, picking up the spent shells at the Janera's house. He also ground down the serial number on his own pistol, something he had no reason to do if he was using it legally. Herb also admitted he killed Janera-Francis because she was a witness and I didn't want to get caught. Herb also admitted that he killed Kathy Francis because she was a witness and I didn't want to be caught. Herb's trial wouldn't begin properly until several months later, in the last days of July 1973. Herb's killings had lasted less than 5 months, between the murder of Lawrence White on October 13th, 1972, to the murder of Fred Perez on February 13th, 1973. Which to me is wild. You gotta remember, Herb was in his mid-20s through all this. He got so many killing done in such a short span of time.
Yeah. Literally from having that first joint when he was 18 to that's crazy.
Now I think he was 26 when he was arrested.
That's wild.
It's wild, yeah. In under half a year, Herb had killed 13 people with plans to kill as many as he could. The reason for Herb only being prosecuted for 10 of the 13 murders was that basically the court did find that Herb had been insane for some of those murders. Lawrence White, Father Tomei, and Mary Guilfoyle. He had been I guess you could say legally insane when he killed them, but legally sane when he killed the others. So there's no way to prosecute him, or there's no real point, I guess, to prosecute him for the murders they believed he was doing while he was crazy.
Yeah.
So after Herb's counsel finally got to work, he hamstrung them, his own counsel, almost immediately by claiming innocence by reason of LSD-induced insanity. Despite, as we already said, A, already found sane, and B, wanting to be found sane. He argued he was not crazy.
Yeah.
And now he's saying, actually, I changed my mind, drugs may be crazy.
Yeah. Oh shit, that didn't work. Hang on, scrap that.
Yeah.
Everything we just talked about, forget it.
Yeah. So then he decided to go completely the other way by going, basically, he went overboard by acting insane. He was like, oh, I'm actually a crazy person. Oh. And some of it was likely genuine.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll argue with that. But all of it was pretty indistinguishable by this point.
On the side of the defense, Dr. Donald Lundy, who would later write a book titled The Die Song about Herb's killings, he testified on behalf of Herb's insanity and played a recording of Herb outlining his philosophy, in which he described politicians in the White House getting together and singing the Die Song, which would apparently cause people who heard it to kill themselves.
The global elite.
Right.
At it again.
The lizard people. He also went to great lengths to explain that he wasn't guilty because the people he killed would be reincarnated and come back anyway. So what's the big deal? When the prosecution accused Herb of fabricating the preventing of earthquakes motive only after he was caught, Dr. Lundy, he contradicted this by referring to several letters that Herb had written years earlier, in which Herb had requested statistics on yearly death tolls and deaths from disasters.
Touche, prosecution. He always believed his deaths would prevent earthquakes. So, got you there.
Fine, have that one. He still killed 10 people.
Exactly. Herb went on to outline several conspiracies he had discovered, namely the bizarre long-haired hippies who secretly run the US Coast Guard, and the most twisted and bizarre of which were the attempt by, quote, the powers that be to cover up, quote, the healthiness of bisexuality. Okay, so Herb explained, and this is what he believed, that homosexuality begins at age 8 years old, and that his parents, rather than indulging him, including engaging in sexual acts with him to provide relief, this is fucked up, they hid this fact from him and caused him to just go mad. Herb was convinced that when he was 5 years old, family friends had convinced his parents to ignore him sexually because they were jealous he and his parents, they would enjoy it too much. So, this is getting far too disturbingly incesty.
I can imagine his defense seems like, we really shouldn't let him ride out his own defense.
Herb would say, though, his sisters and cousins, they weren't ignored, and Herb believed that they had been having relations with their parents from age 6. So, Herb, basically, the conspiracy was that Herb went insane because he didn't have sex with his own parents when he was 5 years old or 8 years old or something. And that the fact that he didn't do that made him insane.
Was it that I was ugly? Oh my God! I wasn't good enough for you. Was that it, Dad?
I think with 99.9% of people, if your parents molested you, you probably go insane.
He pulled the old Uno reverse card.
Yeah, he's like, actually, this...
Fucking hell,
you're fucking mad. Okay, yeah. And guess what? On August 19th, 1973, after 14 hours of jury deliberations, Herbert Mullen, still aged only 26 years old, was convicted on all 10 counts of murder. 2 counts in the first degree and 8 counts in the second. He received a life sentence, but would be eligible for parole in 2020, which, as we're releasing this podcast, 5 years ago. And 5 years ago, he did make a legitimate bid for freedom. Appearing before the California Board of Parole hearings in March 2021, Herbert Mullen, then 74 years of age, was denied an opportunity to raise his body count. District Attorney for the Santa Cruz District, Jeff Rosell, strongly opposed Herb's potential release and insisted to the board that Herb had still not accepted responsibility for the murders he committed. And even worse, he still posed a very active risk to others if he were to be let out. And so, fortunately for the rest of us, Herb passed away, still behind bars, April 18th, 2022, having had his sentence extended for another 7 years. There was no chance Herbert Mullen was ever going to walk out. He was 75 years old, having spent the vast majority of his life, 49 years, in Mule Creek Prison, California. Living,
nice.
Yeah, there you go.
God, what a story.
Herbert Mullen. I think he might be the most fascinating serial killer we've covered thus far, maybe? He's up there. I'd get...
on the insanity levels, absolutely.
On the insanity levels, like, it would be hilarious, some of the shit he comes out with, if he wasn't such a horrible killer who murdered so many people. Honestly, pretty surprising he's so underreported on.
Yeah,
I had never heard of Herbert Mullen until recently, and he murdered 30 people.
It's crazy.
Like, his body count is higher than fucking Ed Kemper.
Yeah,
who's a much more famous serial killer, right?
Yeah,
he's gas. He's a gas man.
He's some man.
Some man for one man.
Yeah, it's why I don't know. He's just I think it's because like there's so many serial killers out there that go with the insanity defense, but it's really kind of like, nah, are you though? I mean, like I know you're a bit cracked, but you're not. But this guy, I genuinely do feel
he's insane.
He's insane. Yeah,
yeah, for sure.
I not for all of them, but I think for some of the murders, I think he genuinely thought that he was doing not the right thing, but God's I think work. he was doing God's work. What he thought was right. But yeah, man, he's crazy.
He's a crazy man. All right, folks, there you go. That is part 2 of Herbert Mullen. We'll be back with you with a fresh episode and a fresh story next week. So stay tuned, folks. If you know what's good for you. And yeah. I like to threaten the audience.
It seems to be working.
I hope so. And yes, thank you so much for listening, folks. And I hope you enjoyed the podcast. All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. And I'll see you.
All right. Thanks, folks. Bye.
Hoob. Hooby boy.